Hello, welcome to the Virtual Learning SIG Conference, and this session is on copyright. If you're not a member of the Virtual Learning SIG, we would love for you to join and connect with other virtual learning professionals and share your expertise because we learn from each other and things are changing constantly in the virtual learning and blended learning community. Hello, I'm Jody Rentfro, the TCEA Virtual Learning President for the term of 2018-2019. This session's on copyright, and we're going to begin copyright with a disclaimer. I am the Emerging Technology Specialist in Lewisville ISD. One of my responsibilities is to support campus media library specialists with copyright questions. Since I'm not a copyright lawyer, I find the exact law and recent court cases examples for them, yet I do not interpret the law. Our official copyright compliance officer is our district lawyer. Based on that information, keep in mind, I am not a copyright attorney. Please consult an attorney familiar with copyright in your jurisdiction for legal counsel. I have represented copyright in education from a general education perspective. TCEA, Lewisville ISD, nor Jody Rentfro assume liability for any information in this video. If you try to contact the Copyright Office, please note they have a disclaimer also that the Copyright Office is unable to provide specific legal information to individual members of the public about questions of fair use. ESSA is the Every Student Succeeds Act. It was implemented by the U.S. government, and it's a 400-page document that covers the compliance of the school districts receiving Title I funding. In this document, they specifically mention that school districts will comply and teach students and parents copyright. If you're interested in this topic, below is the link that specifically addresses an article in Education Week, and it talks about Hakeem Jeffries and his role that he played in facilitating the wording in the addition of that information into ESSA, which is copyright piracy. You may ask, why are we talking about face-to-face in a blended online instructional environment? Well, there's laws that we immediately and automatically use in the face-to-face classroom that do not transition over to the online learning environment. So let's go back and look at those that we, almost all teachers kind of take for granted because it makes it impossible to teach without these laws. So first, let's look at what you must do to qualify for the educational exemption. You must be in a classroom or a similar place devoted to instruction, be present in person with only the students on your roll for that particular class session, be engaged in the face-to-face teaching activities, and be a nonprofit educational institution. Public domain consists of all of the creative works to which no exclusive intellectual property rights apply. Those rights may have expired, been forfeited, expressly waived, or may be inapplicable. Each one of these has very specific guidelines to go by. Movies in the classroom seem to hold the biggest area of misunderstanding for teachers and even a lot of librarians who are your copyright experts on your campus. So let's look at some of the misconceptions first. I can still use movies. I can see movies I find in theaters. I can watch them free online. They are pirated, and you just have to be diligent and find them, and it's very simple. So why don't I watch those? Well, for the simple reason it's illegal in the United States to watch pirated movies. And secondly, getting caught's very simple because your ISP can tell you're going to those sites. And a friend of mine whose husband is in cybersecurity did that one weekend when he was away working, and the ISP provider shut down everything and sent a cease and desist that she was watching pirated material, and then she had to tell her husband when he got home. So, that's not something you want. The first time they give you a warning, the second time they're not going to provide you service anymore. So if you're doing it, you're probably going, oh, well, there's a way to get around that. The security for that is becoming stronger and stronger, and there are less ways to circumvent those pieces put in place to help stop you from seeing it. So now let's look at the classroom. In the online class, you can link to a clip. If you need for them to see the whole movie to really understand a specific educational concept, then those students will have to buy the movie and watch it at home. Or you do not give them a link unless it's in public domain. And if the movie's in public domain, then there's not a problem. So remember, you can link to a clip in any classroom. That's not a problem. And that's if you meet the classroom educational viewing rights, which this again is the educational exemption. So the teacher's present in the classroom, brick and mortar, with the students watching it. Only the kids who are in attendance are watching it. If you're putting this out for students who are not in your classroom, so let's say you loan it to the teacher next door, you can't do that. You purchase it, your kids can see it, and that's if you're meeting all the rules on your campus for what your campus allows for that. It has to be an essential part of the curriculum. You need to think about spontaneity. And in our district, it has to be approved by the principal and be a certain rating, and those are divided up by grade levels. And then, as you said, a legitimate copy, not taped from the TV, not copied from a DVD. So there are rules around that, and you need to think about movies specifically. That seems to text you can use. Movies are a little different. You also can't take the DVD and break it up, even though it says a teacher can make a compilation. So I'm not sure how that works, but those two conflicting laws make it difficult to know which one do I follow for this particular assignment. There are places that you can get public domain old TV shows, like Classic TV, free Classic TV shows, Uncle Earl's Classic Television Channel. Those are TV shows before the 1970s, and most of them are in public domain in the United States. You do need to check. Some of them, they do try to keep current. So those are places you can look and double check those. The public domain movies I have found is public domain flicks. If it won't open, change browsers. Public domain movies, and Uncle Earl's Classic Television Channel. They have some really good holiday movies, and they're really old. I mean, they're old and they're in public domain, yet they can still send an educational message depending on what you're teaching. Just double check the public domain aspects. Originally, I became interested in copyright because I entered my students in a lot of art contests, and the teacher signed off that they had adhered to all the copyright laws. And so right here, for your teachers who are art teachers who are asking you questions, and classroom teachers, and then online teachers also, here are a list of public domain images that you can research and go through. And here are 2 web pages with lists that just stop the film and write down the links. Also, if you come back up here is the National Art Education Association's position on the ethical use of copyrighted imagery in primary sources. And then they have a list of resources there for you. So if you'll notice, a lot of these, Duke comes up, and they have wonderful resources. So as you do your image search, there are lots of options. Public domain. What I do is I go back and I do 10i and do an image reverse lookup. That will tell you where that image first appeared on the internet, and helps you look to see if that is indeed in the public domain. The National Association for Music Educators has a website with a lot of information, and here is the information from that site, and there is their page. It's copyright law and what music teachers need to know. So if you're using something, this is where you would go. How to contact the publisher, get performance rights, the recording rights, and general information. All of these are addressed there, and you can go to that page and get some information for music. Public domain music is pretty hard to find where you can just download and use it. Works published before January 1st, 1923, which really don't work for most of the things we're doing. Those are available, but between 23 and 78 that did not have a valid copyright notice, those are also very hard to find and download online. And works published between 23 and 78 where it was not renewed, those are available. No works published after January 1st, 1978 will pass into the public domain until at least 2048. So that's going to limit us a lot because of that law that was passed. If you play something in your classroom, you have to legally acquire it, and most of your streaming terms of use currently say, and it may be different tomorrow, that you need to, that streaming service is for your personal use. So you need to buy the song in order to play it for your class, and it needs to be aligned to meet the fair use guidelines. It needs to be necessary for the students' understanding of the curriculum. And now we're down to what can you do in a multimedia file, which is where most of us want to use this, either in a movie we're making or in a PowerPoint or whatever you're doing to deliver instruction to your students. So you have the right to use these under fair use most of the time. Remember, nothing's always for fair use for face-to-face instruction, as something assigned to students for self-directed study. Please note, you can't read a student a book like The Giving Tree out loud and then have students listen to it, because the audio files can only be made of the entirety by the only person who has the rights to do that is the author. For remote instruction, so finally something specifically for blended learning, for peer conferences for educators, and you have certain guidelines to follow for that. Fair use in the blended classroom consists of limiting access to copyrighted materials to only the students in your class, limiting access only for the time needed to complete the class session or the course, inform instructors and students and other staff of copyright laws and policies, prevent further copying or redistribution of copyrighted works. According to Blackboard, this could be as simple as an instructor providing a warning or a description in the content to notify students that copying and redistribution of their materials is against copyright law, and not interfere with copyright protection mechanisms on content. Keeping up with the ever-changing laws and the court cases that are coming up, and teaching full-time on probably a totally different topic is ominous, to say the least. A good background and base of information, free, is through Capella University. I completed the course and they just did an excellent job. So if you want to continue to learn, that's where I suggest that you start. And they talk about SIPA and COPA as well as copyright.